Hey guys, BJTHEBRAVE here. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for all of the support. Now, today I'm going to be talking about personality and CCGs. That's right, boys. We are geeking out. We are going deep today, but geeking out in perhaps not quite the way we normally do. In 2013, there was quite an infamous article that was written that was relating personality theory with card games. At the time, Mark Rosewater wrote this in relation to Magic the Gathering, but basically what he was saying can be applied in pretty much all of the different card games. And to save you some time, what this article basically summarized is that most card gamers fell into one of these three personalities, and he called it Timmy, Johnny, and Spike. Timmy was the kind of excitement, the one that was like, oh my god, look at those giant stats, big unit, go smash. Johnny was like the creative gamer. Johnny was the one who wanted to win with style, wanted to win with uniqueness, saw that as part of it's a way of kind of self-expression, if you like. Whereas Spike was the kind of highly serious, highly competitive card gamer. Now, this was a pretty cool article for people who don't know anything about personality theory. This is like quite an easy way to kind of get to grips with it and understand. But, you know, this article's always been quite funny to me because I realized that as someone who is certified in certain personality tools, and I use personality theory quite a lot in my profession, I actually figured it'd be quite fun to talk to you guys a little bit today about some real personality theory and kind of how it actually does relate and how it might play out in card games. Now, there are quite a lot of different personality tools, DISC, Myers-Briggs, Insights. There's lots of things. I won't bore you too much with that. What we're going to use is the Big Five to explore this today, because the Big Five personality model is definitely the most widely accepted framework in psychology. It basically describes personality through 5 broad dimensions or traits. That's openness to experience, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, or negative emotion. These traits capture the most consistent patterns of human thought, emotion, and behavior across cultures. Now, this model is considered to be the most trusted model because it's actually backed by decades of research. It does always show really strong reliability and validity, and it applies universally as well. So interestingly, the findings from the Big Five apply across languages, across ages, across cultures. Which kind of shows you that it's not something that's purely a result of nurture or environmental factors. And interestingly, its ability to predict real-world outcomes such as job performance, relationships, and well-being has basically made it the standard for both scientific research and practical applications. I absolutely love this stuff, guys. So what I'm going to do is, now giving you that backdrop, we're going to just talk a little bit about what that actually looks like in Shadowverse or in Hearthstone or in one of the CCGs that we all play and love. All right, so extraversion. So extraversion is all about a person's tendency to be very outgoing, energetic, and sociable. They enjoy stimulation with the external world. They enjoy attention, the limelight, being center of attention, like this cultivator of malice we can see here. They tend to be quite colorful, and they enjoy interaction with others. And the thing about extraversion, with the opposite being, potentially you could call introversion or just low extraversion. The thing about this is it's all about how a person gets energy, right? If they're doing the things that I just described, then their energy actually goes up, right? Whereas if they're kind of someone who's highly extroverted, if they're kind of alone and on their own, then their energy actually comes down. With introversion, it's kind of in reverse. Now, it's kind of interesting to think about extraversion in CCGs. For starters, look what I'm doing right now. If you're streaming, if you're a content creator, if you're a shoutcaster, for example, or commentator, extraversion can kind of really lend itself to that, right? Because you don't mind having the spotlight on you. You actually get energized. You tend to be quite energetic, so that means that, it can potentially be a bit more interesting for someone else to listen to. The other element, I guess, is like wanting to be part of a team or a community, wanting to be kind of known, all of that sort of stuff is kind of like how you would see this play out in the CCG world, right? I always think my first like digital CCG was Hearthstone, and I always just think Amaz, if you know Amaz from Hearthstone, like absolute classic extrovert. Like every time he's playing a card, he's like, "Oh my god, I can't believe just this happened." I mean, he's just so over the top at extroversion, and the thing is, he's not even like putting it on. A lot of people like try and dial it up, and that's cool, like for entertainment purposes or whatever. But he was like just such a classic brimming with extroversion example. In Shadowverse Worlds Beyond, which is the main game I play these days, I think Ignidius is a very good example of bringing that extroversion energy, and you really see it when he's commentating and he's shoutcasting, and the kind of like fun and the energy and the articulation that he can bring to the table. Now, interestingly, I would make a strong argument that introverts are people with low extroversion are actually ultimately better at the game. That doesn't mean that someone who's highly extroverted can't be good at the game. I would just say that if you were to analyze the top players across these games and look at like the top 1,000 players, I would wager that there are more people with low extroversion or introversion than there are extroversion. And one of the reasons for that is because one of the things that comes with extroversion is like extroverts tend to be quite impulsive. They tend to act first and then think later. And obviously, when you're talking about a strategic card game where you make a move and then that's it, you can't take it back. Like, it's all about kind of like thinking through the options. It's all about like not making a mistake. It's all about playing perfectly. And introverts tend to, their strength really is that they tend to kind of like think first and then act later. So they've kind of got this natural tendency to explore in their head and explore options first, to think through all of the process and the different ways that something, before they actually act. And that kind of like cautious approach actually helps you massively in games like chess and games like CCG, which really require quite a lot of internal thinking before you actually make a decision. Okay, next up we've got conscientiousness. So conscientiousness is interesting. It's a person's tendency to be very organized, responsible, diligent, consistent, orderly, and potentially goal-orientated, right? So conscientious people see things through to completion. They're very, very disciplined and somewhat kind of like process-driven in their kind of thought processes. So, when you think about, look at this diligent note-taker. He's very conscientious, isn't he? Doing his books, making sure the numbers all add up, all the rest of it. That's a great example of that kind of diligence of conscientiousness. Now, where does this come into CCG? So I think that with conscientiousness, what we're talking about here is the ability to kind of like really study the game, first of all, right? So, really understanding like the different matchups, really doing the deep dive into the deck. They probably want to have like some notes, or they want to, like, if you think about high level like tournament play, they probably want to like learn the process for certain matchups, right? How does Swordcraft play against Runecraft? What are the kind of common player patterns that I'm looking for in the processes? And they'll tend to almost like study that. And they're also, the conscientiousness is probably going to help them to kind of like stick with a deck as well. So let's say you want to become awesome at a specific deck. You need to play that deck. You'll hear streamers all the time say, you need to just stick with the deck and just drill the matchup time after time after again. I've met plenty of personalities, and I'm probably one of them, because I'm not very conscientious, by the way. So I think people who are low in conscientiousness, they really struggle to do that. They get bored really quickly and they want to move on to something new that's kind of like exciting and stimulating. Whereas someone who's high in conscientiousness, they just want to drill it and drill it and drill it until they are perfect at it, till they know it like the back of their hand. So it really helps, particularly in tournament play. I think conscientiousness is really important because it helps a player to kind of like really stick with the process, like stick with the deck and go through the losses and figure out what went wrong and mend the process, so to speak, right? And so yeah, once they've got that goal in their mind, they're very, very clear about that and they work diligently towards it. Now, the only thing about being highly on conscientiousness is that sometimes you see they come unstuck a little bit when something very unexpected happens. And of course, in a game that's a CCG, we have RNG, right? So like you might see that kind of like almost like disbelief or not knowing what's going on when they have those moments of RNG, when the process and the training that they've put in doesn't come out right, like they just draw all the wrong cards, and that could be incredibly derailing, if you like, for someone who is high in conscientiousness. You know, one of the interesting kind of like funny things about the conscientiousness is you've got to ask yourself, would someone who's really highly conscientious, like really high, would they even play card games at all? Now, that's like a little bit of an inside joke with myself, because it's like they're probably doing all the important things in life that they should be taking care of and not wasting loads of time playing card games. But you know, I'm pretty sure that there are definitely people who are high in conscientiousness that play. And from a collecting point of view as well, like if you're high in conscientiousness, you probably want to collect, you probably want to like either collect all of the cards for the point of having them all, or you want to collect in line with your goal. So if your goal is to become the best Haven craft player in the game, then you will focus on collecting all of your Haven, and you'll be very, very diligent about not spending your resources unless it goes towards that specific goal that you have highlighted. Okay, so next up is openness, or more fully, this is like openness to experience, right? And this is about a person's tendency to be kind of exploratory and curious and kind of imaginative and creative, and they're very open to new ideas and experiences, and that kind of variety is the spice of life to someone who's high in openness. That's what kind of like that is what is stimulating, that is what is fun. And so this is kind of like the Johnny, right? Remember, we're going back to the article about the Johnny, the Timmy, and the Johnnies are the kind of people who are really high in openness. And what you'll see them celebrating is like creative deck building. You'll probably hear people in the comments who are like, in my videos, who are like, oh God, not more of this, right? They're probably quite high in openness. They don't want the status quo. They want something new and creative, something different. They like kind of more interesting plays too. So you might see someone high in openness drifting towards like slightly fancier combo decks, or with fancier payoffs. Like the style of the win is as important as the win itself, and being unique in how you get there is important to someone who's high in openness, because it's kind of like a sense of expression, of like a way of personally expressing yourself is through that kind of uniqueness. Now, obviously, the downside of someone who's high on openness, if you think about the previous one we just talked about, the conscientiousness, people who are high in openness, they want to move on to new decks and new ideas very quickly, and so they really struggle to kind of like really drill and stay super disciplined in one deck. And just play like hundreds of the games with that one deck. They also like to be first, right? That kind of innovation, that kind of, lots of entrepreneurs, for example, are high in openness. And so they're first with an idea, with an innovation, with something different and unique. And in terms of collection, I think what you'd probably see here is someone who is high in openness. They might prioritize, like, they might want those premium cards. They might want something cool, like a little card back or something like that, because that's actually, again, part of that unique means of expression, if you like. Now, the next one that we're going to talk about is agreeableness. And agreeableness is a person's tendency to be compassionate, to be cooperative, to be supportive in social interactions. And they really prioritize and they get energized by the relational element of life, like your relations to other people. Whereas people who are low in agreeableness, they're much more interested in like facts and figures and numbers and logic, right? And they're task oriented. Low agreeableness people are task orientated. Funnily enough, like this is the one personality trait that has a slight, when you analyze the data, there's a slight gender, because most of these that I'm talking about, by the way, are quite split, as I said, across like age, gender, race, all of that sort of stuff. But the one that is kind of like most difference in gender, and it's only like 60-40, is agreeableness. So slightly more women are, you could think of it, if you want like rough math, you could think of it that like 60% 40% of women are higher in agreeableness than men, 40%. So if you were to line up 10 pairs of a man and a woman, and you said that the man was more agreeable than the woman, you'd be right 4 times out of 10. So it's kind of like roughly something like that. So anyway, again, what does this actually mean then in terms of playing a card game like a Shadowverse? Well, first of all, again, playing something unique as a self-expression, especially like if they're high, because it's how these combine too. So if someone's highly extroverted and highly agreeable, then you might see that might come out as, again, something like playing like something with a unique self-expression. But they're gonna love things like the Shadowverse Park. They're gonna love things like Friends List. They're gonna love things like emotes. These are gonna be less important to someone who's low in agreeableness, but these are gonna be like really, really key to the enjoyment of someone who is high in agreeableness. And especially when you think like a CCG, we're kind of sat behind our own computer, we're in a room on our own often. It's not the most like cooperative, like it's not really a social interaction. So I would argue that we probably have fewer people who are higher in agreeableness. I think CCGs tend to be attract low agreeableness people who are interested in logic, solving problems, that sort of stuff. But the agreeableness people that we do have in CCGs, and we absolutely do have them, they will really look for those chances to connect. So that's why, again, anything like Discord, being a part of the community, engaging in comments, and also they probably enjoy playing nicely with others, right? They probably don't like BM. They don't like conflict in the community. When we get on Reddit and some of these community issues come up and they flare up and stuff, someone who's high in agreeableness, that's going to feel a bit painful to them. They're just going to be like, why can't the community just be like wholesome and like everybody just get on and enjoy the game? Why don't we just all have fun together? And when we do act like that, the agreeable people are going to feel like warm and fuzzy, and they're going to actually like vibe, if you like, with the game and the community, and it's going to strengthen their connection to the game. And the other thing is with agreeableness is they're going to be super supportive of others. So you always want agreeable people in your team, right? Because they're going to be really supportive of you. They're going to get more pleasure from supporting others and supporting you than they are from or if you're agreeable, you're going to probably get more pleasure from supporting others than you are just from kind of like being successful yourself. And the other thing about agreeableness, again, given the kind of relational element, is they might connect more with like character lore or an identity, right? So like the lore or the art on the card might mean more to them, right? Because they might deter a human connection just from the kind of background and lore of it itself. So it's funny, like this card here, the Sacred Road Sister, this is from the Warhammer 40,000 Battle Sisters, and they're kind of like largely a female faction, right? And I remember in Warpforge at the time, there were like 2 or 3 female players that were big in the community, and it like instantly became their favorite faction. And I wonder whether it's, again, like some sort of like connection, identity and kind of human relation element going on there. Okay, next, last but not least, we have neuroticism. This is really interesting, guys. I could honestly do an hour video on each of these. I'm giving you like a really basic high level here. If you're enjoying this stuff and you haven't fallen asleep and you're still here, well done. Hit that like, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do more of this stuff. But anyway, let's get back to neuroticism. So the thing with neuroticism, it's sometimes called negative emotion, and it's a really important personality trait. And if more people understood this, my God, it would kind of like inform you about so many things going on in life, because who isn't subject to negative emotion at some point, right? This is about a person's tendency to experience negative emotions such as anxiety, moodiness, frustration, irritability more easily, even depression, right? So what we're saying is if you are high on the neuroticism scale, then you are more susceptible to negative emotion. You are going to feel anxious more. You're gonna feel nervous more. You're gonna feel negative emotion more. If you're low, God bless you on the neuroticism scale. Well, lucky you have been dealt a good deck of cards in that sense, because what that will mean is that you have a shield and you're quite resilient to things that might trigger the emotional reaction in many other people who have a higher on the scale. And when I talk about scale, what I mean is if we lined up 100 people randomly from the population, we could literally line them up by saying, who is more neurotic and who is less neurotic. And we could literally have, one person on one end would be number one. They'd be the least neurotic, and the person at 100 would be the most neurotic. And, obviously, the rest of us would be somewhere in between. And so that's what I mean by the scale. And so it's really, really fascinating to think of in a card game. The first thing that it makes me think of is tilt. We've all heard about tilt, right? Card gamers going on tilt. Going on tilt is where something's gone wrong, something has, your expectation has not been met. Maybe you didn't draw the card you needed, for example, and it has completely knocked you. You are no longer playing the game to the level and capability that you are capable of, right? Because you are on tilt. Your emotions have hijacked you. Your amygdala has taken control, and you are operating now out of frustration, anger, fear, something like that. So you can imagine, like, if you've got the neuroticism shield, we could call it, right? If you're low in neuroticism, then you're more resilient. You might just go, okay, didn't draw it. Shit happens, card games. And you're able to move on. So low neuroticism people are very resilient. They're able to persist or bounce back more quickly. Whereas if you're really high in neuroticism, you're probably best off just like turning the game off and going for a walk and just calming down, like doing something totally different, because the chances are that you will be on tilt. The other one that I've heard gamers talk about quite a lot is ladder anxiety. You ever done that where you've got like really high on ladder, you're doing really well in the tournament? I got this a little bit at the Shadowverse Open qualifier at the weekend. Go and see. I just done a video on how that went, but I had this huge win streak to start with, and then I started to get a little bit more nervous. And so ladder anxiety, though, I mean, people have said they've got like to top 10 on ladder, and they literally can't play another game because they're so anxious about losing their MMR that they're going to fall down ladder that they can't bring themselves to play, and they start playing other game modes because they want to play the game, but they've just got this ladder anxiety. They can't play a ladder anymore. So that's another great example of where like that's your neuroticism kicking in, right? Like, again, if you're lower in neuroticism, then you're probably able to kind of persist and move through that and still play well. And as I just kind of alluded to, the other one is things like nerves in tournaments. Whenever there's a pressure situation, basically, that's where you want low neuroticism, because you'll just kind of have that resilience against the pressure. Yeah, it's really interesting, neuroticism, because, indeed, it makes me kind of think about mental health issues more generally and how that kind of correlates to neuroticism, right? And it may well be why many of us actually even play CCGs. Like, why do we even play them, right? Do we do it to cope with stress? Do we do it because it's a haven from the world? Is it I know, for example, with myself, that when something emotional is going on in my life, I love playing my CCGs. I love booting a CCG up because for me, it's not emotional. For me, it's like a logical problem that I can focus on, that I have fun enjoying, and that focus on the logic and the task just completely diffuses the negative emotion and the stress. So it makes me wonder, how many of us play CCGs because of that. But yeah, and of course, this is just the basics, guys. This is me just taking you through the big five. You can obviously combine these and say, what happens if someone's like low in neuroticism and high in extraversion and blah, blah, blah. And it leads to lots of different outcomes. But I just wanted to share that with you today, guys, because I'm fascinated, as you can tell, probably by personality. Like I say, I'm certified in various personality tools, and I use them a lot professionally at work. And obviously my big passion is CCG. So this was a really fun video for me. If you're still here, well done. Sorry, and thanks for letting me geek out, like double geek out in this video. If you like this though, or if you've got any questions at all, then definitely leave me a question in the comments and I will be more than happy to speak more about this with you. So thanks again for all of the love and support. The channel is booming at the minute and I really appreciate all of the subs, the likes, the comments. It's been awesome. So thank you again. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, maybe check this one out next. I'll see you guys in the next one.